Hello and welcome to Stained Glass Gaming, where I turn video games into glass. Last year, for Valentine's Day, I made the red heart from Undertale. I said I would make the rest at a later date. Well, here I am a year later. These are the rest of the hearts from Undertale. There are 7 human souls shown in-game, each a different color, which means I need 7 different colors of glass. I say 7 because I sold the red heart I made last year. I am also making the hearts slightly different, so it's good I'm remaking the red heart. Each heart is its own piece of glass, but I add clear glass to the top to hang the hearts once they are finished. I tried to color match as much as possible. The problem this time was with the blue glass. This is the in-game image I used to base the colors on. I couldn't find cyan glass at my local glass shop, so I went with the lightest blue I had. I had the same problem with the dark blue glass. At least, there's a difference between the two blues. Not as much as in-game, but it's what I got. The other colors I was able to color match. I used 3-bladed scissors to cut out the paper pattern. I glued the pattern onto the pieces of glass using Elmer's glue. Last year, I didn't have a ring saw at the time I made the video, so I had to use a Dremel to attempt to cut the glass so I could grind it using the grinder. It was not the ideal way to do it, but I had to make do with the tools I had at the time. Now that I have a ring saw, I use it to cut out the hearts instead. Then I can refine the shape using the grinder. The problem with the ring saw is that it can't make right angles because the blade is circular. There are blades that are thin and straight and can make right angles. Think of it like a bandsaw blade. But I don't have one because they're expensive and need special belts. I do the best I can and move on to the grinder to refine the shape. Another problem I have is grinding straight lines. These hearts are all about straight lines. Something I've used to help is lining up the glass with the lines on the grinder grid, and move the glass as straight as possible using the grid as a guide. I also use a ruler to check if the lines are straight and grind where I need to. I use the 1-inch diameter bit to grind the longer sides of the heart. I switch to the smallest diameter bit, which is 1/8 inch, to grind the smaller parts of the heart. I have to hold the glass in the air because the grinder bit sits on top of the shaft. This causes me to grind unevenly. This is evident when I turn the glass over where there is no paper. To fix this, I turn the glass over once I've ground the side with the paper and grind the side where the glass is exposed to try and make the lines more straight. It still looks a little bit wonky though. What I might have to do is make a platform I can rest the glass on while I grind when using the 1/4 and 1/8 inch bits. Even with the 1/8 inch bit, I still can't grind right angles. Something like a jewelry bit would work, but I have something else I could use. Dremel bits would be able to make right angles because they could be very small. I do have a Dremel, but I didn't use it because I wanted to see how well the 1/8 inch bit would do. There are still some parts that aren't exactly straight, but that was more because of user error rather than a problem with the grinder. Last time I made this, I didn't saddle the foil at the right angles, and when I foiled, it split and exposed the glass. Now this does make for a nice artistic 8-bit look, but foil splitting is not what I want. I decided for these hearts to saddle the foil so that when it does split, there is foil underneath and not exposed glass. This does mean more time spent foiling, but I'm sure the end result will be worth it. Copper foil is wrapped around the glass and pressed down with burnishing tools to ensure a snug fit. I use an X-Acto knife to cut the corners so I can fold the foil over the edges. Once the heart is foiled, I use an X-Acto knife and a ruler to trim the saddled foil to make it line up with the regular foil. Now that everything is foiled, I can start soldering. I use 6040 lead tin solder to stick the pieces together, applying flux before I solder. The flux allows the solder to bond to the copper. Otherwise, the solder won't stick. I tack the pieces so they won't move when I remove the push pins. Okay, real quick, I need to explain an obvious issue. There are large gaps between the clear pieces and the hearts. I had issues with grinding, and once they are foiled, it becomes very obvious. Something I can do is to fill the gaps with copper wire, and then solder as usual. If there is nothing in the gap, the solder will just continue to drip through to the other side, and getting it to look nice is a challenge. By putting copper wire in the gaps, the solder has something to grab hold of. Small gaps are okay, but once the gaps become larger, soldering becomes a problem. I make hooks using copper wire and attach them to be able to hang the piece once it is finished. Another thing I decided to do is bead the entire outside edge for each heart. Beading the edge gives the piece a more rounded look, as well as adding strength to the edges. I didn't bead the edge the last time I made this, but decided to do it this time. Here is a comparison between a beaded edge and a non-beaded edge. The yellow heart is beaded and has a more rounded look, while the red heart is not beaded and has a squarer, sharper look. I set up my makeshift clamp to hold the glass while I bead the edge. I don't clamp it very tight, just enough to hold the glass. I can't add too much solder, otherwise it will fall off the edge. Once everything cools down, I wash the finished project with water and dish soap, dry it off, and turn the solder black using patina that will react with the lead. The final thing I do is apply wax to slow down the natural oxidation process. If you want to know more, I have a tutorial playlist where I explain each step in more detail. These all came out looking better than the red heart I made last year. Settling the foil and beading the edges really did make a difference. Trying to record the dark purple and dark green glass was a challenge. Recording glass is a challenge anyway, but it is more difficult when dark glass is involved. It didn't help that it was partly cloudy either. Though each heart was only 2 pieces, it still took longer than I thought to make them. Happy Valentine's Day! Like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you would like to see me make down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all through the next pane.